Yo, what's going on people? Guns blazing back at it again, and today let's take a deep dive into Yu-Gi-Oh lore and see what's up with Gagagigo, this strange little reptile whose many stages are shown in different cards. His story is unexpectedly a very dramatic one. However, most of his story is actually not even in his own card line, but rather in other cards that are related to him and include him in the artwork. Important message for my subs at the end as well, so stay tuned, let's get into it. The story begins not actually with Gagagigo. There's an archetype of monsters called the Charmers. What we do know about them is that they capture and tame small, young, low-leveled monsters. Not in an animal cruelty kind of way, but in a I'm gonna make a bond with you and in return you have to serve me kind of way. Okay, admittedly that sounds a bit weird, but that's pretty much what they do. Monsters in the Yu-Gi-Oh realm are generally harmful to humans, but similar to lions in the real world, they can actually view a human as family if their friendship begins at a very early age. So there's actually 6 different Charmers, one for each original Yu-Gi-Oh alignment: Dark, Earth, Fire, Light, Water, and Wind. But out of all of these, Gagagigo and his Charmer area definitely have the most lore behind them. So as you can see, that's our little Gajo in the corner. That's him, Gagagigo. Except he's not really Gagagigo yet. He's Gigabyte. And he was getting into all kinds of trouble until Area swooped in and saved his luscious reptilian booty hole. Now take note of how the card description talks about his current disposition. He has a tranquil soul. His alignment is not yet influenced in either direction to become truly good or evil. But he does carry a destiny that one day his heart shall be tainted by evil. That's a long ways down the road. Anyways, he serves under Area as we mentioned before. Through training with Gigabyte, Area can learn both to tame and command water-type monsters, as well as improve her own strength and skills. In return, she gives Gigabyte the power of the Naughty. He powers up into Gigabyte. Now, of course, he serves under Area for a while, but eventually there comes a time where you gotta send your kids off to college. And in this case, the Charmers must finally part their ways with their familiars. Because, you know, they're grown. They can be alone, and they can take on the world on their own, so take note of the cards Familiar Possessed and now Unpossessed. They're now free to wander the world. This brings us to Gagagigo, the first stage of this young Bajo's life where he's independent. Now at first his card description confused me. This young evildoer used to have an evil heart, but by meeting a special person, he discovered justice. It's important to note that it's not referring to when he was a baby Gigabyte, because he wasn't evil back then. And that special person is actually not Area the Water Charmer. Although Area was important to him, she was not the one who taught Gagagigo justice, and we will find out who that person is soon enough. This card description goes way into the future. He's not even evil at this moment, while he is just Gagagigo. He is, however, the equivalent of a young, angsty, delinquent teenager. And now that he has no direct supervision of his parental figures, aka Area, he has discovered age-old concepts such as fapping and yes, even stealing. So Gagagigo one day stumbled upon Freed's army camping out. Marmoting Captain aka Marauding Captain was making food. You got the boy Freed wondering where his lunch is at, and it's inferred that Gagagigo tried to steal some of that grub. Was he successful? No, he got caught. So, a little scuffle breaks out, and then Freed thought things were getting a little out of hand. Gagagigo, strength-wise, is stronger than Freed at this point in time, but Freed has a little trick up his sleeve. Now, being in the heat of the moment and not really wanting anyone to get hurt, he throws up a portal into the Dark Dimension to end the fight prematurely and to avoid any unnecessary bloodshed. Now, the reason Freed has this portal to the Dark Dimension in the first place is because he's enemies with Invader of Darkness and his army. So when he wants to fight them, he throws it down, his army walks through, and then they'll have a battle, presumably. But in any case, as horrible as the Dark Dimension is, Freed decides that it's better for Gagagigo to be sent there rather than for either of them to die over a food fight. Now, Gagagigo, of course, gets shafted in this situation and ends up wandering around in the Dark Dimension. Eventually, he meets Invader of Darkness, who at first plans to sacrifice him, but I guess he changed his mind and said, you know what, let's use him for some entertainment, let's put him in a cell battle. Now, as the card name suggests, this cell battle was meant for 2 people, Blazing and Pachi and Gagagigo, Water versus Fire. So then who's this third guy? Well, remember the guy making food for Freed? That's him, also known as a Marauding Captain. He interferes with the cell battle to help out Gagagigo. Seeing that Gagagigo is losing the battle on his own, the captain blocks a Blazing and Pachi blast using his body as a shield. Now, Gagagigo ends up using the captain's body in many different ways later, such as cooking more food for him. I don't know what you were thinking, but that's besides the point. They end up defeating Blazing and Pachi and escape the grasp of Invader of Darkness. But wait, why did Marauding Captain save Gagagigo? We know he's against the Invader of Darkness, but he's not really affiliated with Gagagigo. All he knows about Gagagigo is that he tried to steal the food that he cooked for Freed and the army. Most likely, he felt that Freed acted way too rashly by straight up banishing Gagagigo into the DD. It's true that he could have risked some casualties or injuries, but in all honesty, that probably wasn't likely. Freed could have tried to end the fight peacefully, although that would mean that mid-fight he would have to stand down to Gagagigo. So Marauding Captain would acknowledge that the Dark Dimension is a very scary place and Gagagigo would probably get hurt down there. He follows him through to the Dark Dimension. With that good heart inside him, he doesn't think that Gagagigo dying in the Dark World is a fair punishment for him just trying to get some food to eat, so he felt obligated to help him out. And this, of course, my friends, is the special person by whom Gagagigo discovered justice. Eventually they team up and end up fighting alongside each other in the Dark World, taking on the Goblin attack force where Gagagigo literally skated circles around them. And eventually they decided to go for the big boss himself, Invader of Darkness. Unfortunately, in the battle, one of the captain's men got into a sticky situation against the Invader and are about to get their head blown off by an Invader Kamehameha. But as Gagagigo learned from a kind Bajo who once did the same for him, if bad guys shoot beams at people, you use your body to block that. And that's what he did. Unfortunately, this would prove to have serious consequences. The injuries Gagagigo received were life-threatening and he needed medical support ASAP. Here's where he meets with a sinister fate. Enter Kazaki, who is a workaholic mad scientist. He studied the languages of the Dark World a little too long and became absolutely crazy. But one thing that Kazaki specialized in is using his technology to power up various creatures and if need be, reconstruct their bodies. Something that Gagagigo did need, but it would have risks. Now Gagagigo did know the risks of being taken in by this evil mad scientist, but he knew that if he wanted to live and have another shot at fighting Invader of Darkness and all of the other evil in the world, he had to do it. Kazaki then restored him, but also had to fit his body with mechanized parts, and in the end he became a much more powerful being, enter Gagagigo. But two things. The power in him was a little too much for him to handle, and Kazaki's evil influence had its way with him. The justice he wanted to dish out turned into a hatred for his enemies and anyone who did him wrong in the past. And that includes the one who sent him into the Dark World in the first place, Freed. So using Kazaki's technology once more, he evacuated himself from the Dark Dimension and returned to the human realm to hunt for Freed, who was now a general. But even with the new power from Kazaki's Reconstruction lab, he still couldn't take Freed down. Although he's still once again stronger than Freed in terms of pure strength alone, Freed's equipment and battle technique savvy gave him the upper hand. Being so frustrated that he couldn't take down Freed, he sacrifices any of what's left of his soul and morality to become even stronger. You know, why couldn't I defeat Blazing and Pachi? Why couldn't I defeat Invader of Darkness? Why couldn't I defeat Freed? He asked himself, powering himself up to become Gagagigo, a soulless behemoth stronger than both Invader of Darkness and Freed the Mattress General, even with his techniques. Gagagigo went on a killing spree, destroying anyone who has defeated him in the past. He destroyed Impachi and took his head, killed Invader of Darkness, but even after all that, he was not satisfied. In order to prove to himself that he was the strongest being of them all, he had to take down Freed. So in one last decisive battle, he wears down Freed to the point of landing one last killing blow. But showing up in front of him just in time is the one that saved him and taught him justice, and let him use his body in ways he never thought he'd need to. Standing bravely before Gagagigo was the Marauding Captain, who reminded him of who he once was and showing him the ugliness of what he has become. Reminding him once again that even more important than becoming the most powerful being is justice, friendship, and sacrifice. With this, Gagagigo struggles within himself to decide from this day forward to continue his quest for power or to go back on the path of justice. He decides once and for all to fight for justice and swears an oath to it, finding redemption. Rising up and bearing his original undefiled name, Gagagigo swears to do good for the rest of his days. And that's the story of Gagagigo. There's a little more to Gagagigo the Risen that happened afterwards, but it's more of a side story at that point, and there's no longer much detail involved. Anyways, if you like this kind of video and want me to dive deep into the lore of other Yu-Gi-Oh cards, be sure to like, sub, and comment on what you would want to see next. To my loyal subscribers, thank you for sticking around, although this is my first upload of the year and it took a while to do, so very sorry for the long wait, and sorry if it seems like I left, but I promise I'm still here. January was really busy, and if you remember, I'm full-time programming a video game now, and I really had to get into the habit of waking up every morning and going straight to work on the game. Because if I don't, then I'll just fall into laziness and being complacent. But you know, now that I've gotten into a good rhythm, I can now more consistently make content on YouTube and Twitch once again, since I won't feel guilty about not getting enough work done. So the next videos, expect them to definitely not take this long to come out. We're going to be on a faster release schedule from now on, so I hope you guys stick around. I got some cool stuff in the future waiting for you guys. So with all that being said, thank you for watching until the very end of the video. You guys have yourselves a good one, and this is Guns Blazing, signing out.
In a hazy glow, my hands, your bones. Loose up, we break the scene. One step deep as you fall to me. High clap, we skip a beat. Count 1, 2, 3. And don't you stop the music, get into it. Won't you dance with me? Find your